Closed captioning for Lakeland Currents is supported by the Minnesota Department of Commerce, Telecommunications Access Minnesota, and Nisswa Tax Service. Nisswa Tax Service, tax preparation for businesses and individuals. Across from City Hall in Nisswa and online at nisswatax.com.
Hello again, everyone, and welcome to the third season of Lakeland Currents. It's hard to believe it's been that long, but this is entering our third season this year, and we're happy to have you aboard. Tonight's show, the topic is called Heat Your Home This Winter, but Don't Burn It Down. It might sound like a pretty drastic title, but in reality, it is realistic. I'll give you a little example. The latest statistics that we have from the National Fire Protection Association shows that in 2007, there were 17,675 civilians that lost their lives because of residential fires. There were 118 firefighters killed while on duty during that year. Fire killed more Americans in 2007 than all other natural disasters combined. 84% of all civilian fire deaths occurred in residence, in homes where you live. And there's an estimated 1.6 million fires in the year 2007. And the property loss to those fires was over $14 billion. And an estimated 32,500 fires were intentionally set in those residences. So it is an important topic, and being that we're just entering into the wood burning and the heating season, we thought we would do a show about the safety and things to be considering when heating your homes this winter. And my guests this evening are in the industry, and I think more importantly, they are here because they're educators, and they spend a lot of their time trying to educate people on safety issues in regards to heating your homes. To my immediate right is Mike O'Rourke, who is the sales manager for Wilkening Fireplace in Walker, Minnesota. And to his right is Christopher Odell, who is the owner of Complete Chimney Care, and Christopher is from Pine River. Gentlemen, welcome to the show.
Thanks
nice to have you here.
Thank you, Ray.
Maybe we could talk just very briefly about some of the things that people can do in their homes to be alarming themselves so if something does happen. Whoever would like to kick it off, go ahead.
Well, I would say that, of the statistics that you're describing here tonight, certainly of the fires related to their fireplaces, I think a majority of these are preventable. And with the proper maintenance, I think these fires that result in damage to your home or even loss of life can be prevented. So that's the great news. Certainly fire alarms throughout the house is a very, very key component. Most modern homes, newer homes that are built these days, it's required. There's codes that come into play. But even with that said, if you live in an older home, making sure, we all hear this a lot, make sure your fire alarms are up to date, make sure the batteries, or even have them hardwired in. It's probably pretty cost effective to have that done. And it's been proven and shown that if your fire alarm is activated, you're going to be aware of an issue that way too. And also having fire extinguishers and things in place in case some accident does happen throughout the home, whether it's in the garage or related to your wood burning appliance. Have a plan, have something in mind in case something does happen.
And I think we should point out we're talking about all forms of heating your homes. We're
Yes.
talking about electricity, propane, fuel oil, natural gas, and wood. We're going to spend a little bit of the last part of the program this evening on wood because we live in the part of the state where the most wood burning devices are located because of our access to wood. So it's really important. Also, I think maybe we could talk a little bit about carbon dioxide.
Sure.
Would either of you like to address that a little bit?
Carbon monoxide and
And dioxide.
Right. You should have those. Well, those alarms are just as important, in my opinion, as the smoke alarms. And the biggest issue that I usually find with those is that they're not located in the right spot. People often put them down by their furnaces when really it should be in a location that's going to wake you up in the middle of the night. If your bedroom is 3 floors up from the furnace and that alarm goes off, you're probably not going to hear it. So either have one on every floor. Carbon monoxide dissipates fairly evenly, fairly quickly. So you should have it where it's going to wake you up, or by any sleeping bedroom or close to a sleeping bedroom, where people are going to be woken up in the middle of the night. And anything, people always think of connect that with wood, but CO can come from attached garages. Probably the biggest source of turning alarms on is attached garages. Anything that burns, if you've got a gas stove, you can have CO spill from that. So small spills don't worry about, but larger spills, you know, if you find yourself getting headaches for no apparent reason, you might want to check to see if there's something going on.
I heard on the news as I was driving into the show tonight, there was a death last night in Rogers from a house fire. I believe it was houses down from the little infant that was killed in the tornado that occurred in Rogers just 2 years ago. Wow. So we're already into the season, we're into the heating season, and we're into the time when tragedy has already struck in Minnesota. These things aren't really expensive, are they?
No, they're not. And you can have them professionally installed. You can do this yourself. A lot of these things are very, very simple. You can buy carbon monoxide, very effective carbon monoxide detectors at your local hardware store. You can buy them online. A lot of them are plug-in types that you can just literally take out of the box, plug them right into an outlet. They have combination monitors as well that do smoke and carbon monoxide. I think those are terrific. They're inexpensive. I've even had some results with insurance agents that actually give these items away. So I don't think not having them is an excuse, really. You know, every home should be protected with the basics, and that would be alarms and fire extinguishers and the knowledge and a plan in case there is some sort of an accident.
What do you mean a plan? Could you just tell us briefly what that means?
Sure. I think, you know, every home should have some sort of an escape plan or a in case of emergency plan. You know, in my home I have small children, and we have a designated area outside the home if there should be an issue in our home. The children know to get outside of the home as quickly as possible, and then we meet in this specific area. And you know, that's really the extent of it. In our home, it's accessible for us all to get out fairly easy. Some homes, if you're in upper levels, you know, maybe you need to have ladders or some sort of an escape route. You know, each home will be a little bit different, but primarily know to you know, if you hear that alarm go off, take it seriously, and you know, investigate, figure out what's going on, but ultimately get out of the house.
It isn't ultimately the fire that kills people, is it? It's usually the smoke.
It's usually the smoke.
Yeah.
Or the lack of oxygen because the fire is consuming the oxygen that's available to
Yeah.
people, and it doesn't take very long.
Yeah.
And I think the other point is that, you know, the fire, the house fire, the whatever, is always the thing that happens to the other guy.
Yeah.
It never happens to you until it happens to you. And the time, when you talk about planning, you know, the time to figure out how to get out of your house is not when the fire started. I mean, it sounds so kind of ridiculous to people, but to sit down and make that plan ahead of time can save your life, can save your child's life, you know. And it's not, doesn't take that much time, it's not that big a deal, but if you talk about it ahead of time, then when that other person becomes you, you've got a plan for getting out of the house.
One of the things that causes a lot of the fires are clearances. You want to just talk a little bit about these particular devices, whether it's a fuel oil stove or a propane stove or a wood stove?
Well, you know, ideally, if you're having a combustible product installed in your home, or you have it in your home, you want to make sure that it meets the proper clearances. And, you know, if a manufacturer has tested their product, that testing goes, it's significant testing, significant cost, and if it says it can be 10 inches from a combustible, it can be 10 inches from a combustible, but it can't be 9. It can't be 9.5. It could be 11, but those clearances, if you're installing yourself, you really need to look at those directions. They're there for a reason, especially on tested products. And if they're non-tested products, you need to go to what the default says. Like on pipe, Chris bought a couple of pieces of pipe, and this would be a connector pipe on a wood stove probably, but the same is true if you have a pellet or corn or whatever. There's clearances on that pipe. But for example, this pipe clearance to combustibles is 18 inches, okay? This pipe, which is also a connector pipe, but has an airspace or a gap here, an inside stainless steel liner, this clearance is 6 inches to a combustible. So for example, we find some cases where a stove that we might be installing, its clearances are 5 inches to a combustible. Well, if the homeowner uses this pipe, they have to move the stove further away because the pipe can't be as close as the stove can be. So clearance to combustibles you have on the unit itself, on the pipe that you're using to vent the product, and again, this isn't just wood. This would be the same is true for gas appliances, for pellet, for corn,
Fuel oil.
fuel oil, correct. There are clearances that have to be maintained. And that's why you get situations where people will say, you know, they had a house fire and they say, you know, that stove has been installed like that for 17 years. Why did it ignite now? Well, it took 17 years for the wood to go through what we call pyrolization, and then that wood ignited finally. Wood ignites at about 463. But if you expose it to temperatures over 150, that flash point slowly gets lowered, and then eventually it will ignite. So those clearances are just, I can't tell you how important they are. If the biggest, when I go out and when you go out and check, especially places that have been installed by the homeowner, they get that fudge factor in there where, you know, they think, well, 2 inches I can cheat to 1.5 inches. You really can't. I mean, won't hurt in the short run, but eventually it will.
You know, I think there's certainly a lot of senior citizens who don't have the ability to maybe get up and check out their chimney, their roof systems, or the clearances. How do people know that the person they're having coming to their home is a reliable person that can tell them the accurate information? In your case, Christopher, I know you are certified.
We are, and we are certified through the national. We're members of the National Chimney Sweeps Guild and CSIA certified, which is the Chimney Safety Institute of America. We are adhere to a NFPA 211 code book, which is a nationally recognized book of codes for venting systems, in our case regarding chimneys and connector pipes and different products. That's a very good question, and we deal with that on a daily basis out in the field, inspecting in people's homes and people when they call our office looking for services. It's very important that you get references, that you talk to a local fireplace dealership like Wilkeny Fireplace, or in Brainerd and Baxter you can call some of the other Northland Brick and Fireplace. And I think that they deal with individuals on a day-to-day basis. They have a tendency to send you in the right direction. They're going to talk to you about the people who really understand and really make a difference. I come across it daily when we're out making inspections that we had an appliance installed, a customer maybe had an appliance installed, and you know, here we come along to do an inspection, and there are some really, you know, inappropriate things being done there. So it's very, very important that whatever's being installed, just like Mike said, each appliance is a little bit different. Each chimney system is a little bit different, and it's tested to its own clearances, and that's what you have to go by. You need to make sure you read that manufacturer's recommended installation, and that's really what you go by.
And I know in your case, Christopher, you do some pre-design work with some companies who are building homes, building residential and commercial properties.
Yes.
So you try to help them understand the clearances before these structures are up.
That's correct.
And I'm sure you've run across, as you said, many buildings that they're not correctly installed.
All the time.
Are your options pretty limited then?
Well, they are, because now you have to go backwards. You know, once you're in a home and something's been installed, now you have to go backwards and you have to take things apart and reinstall to get them correct. And oftentimes it's a budget. It comes down to people, really they budgeted for a new appliance and they purchased that and had it installed. They really can't afford to go backwards. But ultimately it's about safety. And again, you know, of all the statistics and the things that we see out there, regardless if it's a wood product or some of the other solid fuel products that we work with, these things are, in the most part, preventable. You know, they really, really are. It comes down to regular maintenance, making sure that the clearances are met, proper installation, and then just good common sense, making sure that whoever's operating those wood-burning appliances or the other appliances, you know, they're keeping things in an orderly fashion. They're, you know, not making a mess of their wood pile, and they're keeping things maintained on a regular basis. It's very important.
So getting that furnace checkup in the fall is really important.
It is.
Very important.
Absolutely. It should be part of your budget.
If it's a gas furnace, for example, and it's not burning properly, it might be just one bad night and it's all over.
Absolutely. That's right.
How about, maybe you could just talk a little bit about the products that are burned in stoves, people are burning in stoves, because that has a lot to do with what happens to the chimney structure, doesn't it?
Right. The one thing that I did want to mention, along with if you go to a hearth product dealer, along with how do you recognize the hearth products industry has an NFI category, which is, it's a 3-hour test, it's continuing education. So if you were talking about how do I know I can trust this person or that this person knows something? Well, if you don't have an NFI certification or a CSIA, it doesn't mean you don't know anything, but if you do have it, it means that you took the time, you studied voluminous material. In my case, I teach some of the classes, so but you have to, this card, they would have a card to say, yes, I've done the testing, etc. Now back to your question about wood or all the material. I mean, propane, gas, natural gas, obviously you're not going to check your natural gas. Propane, I can tell you, does have some impurities in it, and those impurities are not going to change how it burns, but you will see a white filament that'll build on gas appliances from impurities in propane. Pellets, good, there's hard pellets and soft pellets, and each appliance will burn a little better on one or the other, so you might want to check and see about your appliance. Corn, you have to keep the moisture content down. It should be under, most appliances are under 11%, some are under 14. And wood is my pain in the neck, if you will, because we sell an awful lot of wood products. We manufacture wood products, and people constantly think that they're burning dry wood. And so we've finally gone to getting these moisture meters that both we use but also can sell to people so that they can actually tell what they have. Now, if you take this piece of wood, and
it's a piece of oak, by the way.
Yep. If I turn this on, and if I, it looks, by all appearances, it looks dry. It doesn't feel wet. And if I put this in, I don't think you can see that.
We'll take your word for it.
Okay. It's at about 22, and if I take a couple other spots, it's probably going to be at about over 30.
30% moisture.
30% moisture content. You want to burn with wood, ideally 20% moisture content or less. Again, if you were 22, but we'll see wood that'll be 40, 45% moisture content. And what happens with that, which people don't understand, when water boils, it holds the temperature at that temperature, 213 or something, okay? Wood should be burning, you should be burning like 300 to 600 degrees at least in most of the new appliances to get the secondary combustion to kick in, to burn all of your particulate. If you're not doing that, you're not getting the BTUs, you're not getting the heat.
You're wasting
40,
50%
right,
of the material.
Exactly. You're just not, it's inefficient. Also, it's probably one of the, it's not probably, it is the leading cause of creosote buildup in the chimneys. And then either you or call Chris to have someone clean it. But moisture content is a tremendous factor in how frequently you need to clean your chimney.
It's curious to me, and I know you probably don't want to address this because you're in this industry, but you see more and more of these outside wood burning units, and people are burning 4, 5, 6 foot lengths of wood, and normally this wood, if it has bark on it, is drying from the ends, if I'm not mistaken. And if it's been cut for 4 or 5 or 6 months, that just isn't dry wood, is it? I mean, there's just no way it's going to be dry in that period of time.
No, it's definitely not going to be.
So it's polluting, and it's inefficient.
Absolutely, yeah. I think those boilers, they operate a little bit differently, when you have those outdoor furnaces. For consumers that are buying their own firewood or, buying firewood from a private party, or if they're cutting their own firewood, they really need to try to get ahead of the season so that they're not burning wood right now that they just cut this summer. That's just not enough time for that wood to be dry enough. If you're buying wood from a source, I think it's important to explain to that person or that company that you're buying the wood from that you really expect good quality dry firewood. You're willing to pay for it, but you really understand what dry wood is, and that's what you expect. We see a lot of situations where the wood comes out, And you know, the homeowner just assumes that it, like Mike said, this looks like a great piece of wood, but when you test it, it actually is a little bit more moist than what you want. And by far, burning moist wood inside your fireplace is going to be, you know, causing a tremendous amount of inefficiencies in the BTUs that you're going to be getting. The moisture that is evaporated out of the wood rises into the flue system or into the chimney, and as it's cooled, then it turns to condensation. It develops on the sidewalls of the flue. Thus, you're creating yourself creosote. So it's definitely an important aspect of burning wood and wood appliances. Good quality woods. Just can't stress that enough.
Were you going to say something, Mike?
Yeah, I was just going to say the simple questions are, ask the person, when was it cut? When was it split? If you've got a hardwood, it should have been cut and split for an absolute minimum a year and left a year, ideally 2 years. Hardwoods meaning like oak, maple, okay?
Yeah.
Now if you get a softer wood, you can maybe get into that 6 months to a year, but you're not going to get as many BTUs out of some of those woods.
Yeah.
And then some woods, I always say you can burn any wood, it's just that it's got to be dry. Well, like pine, by the time pine dries and by the time it rots, you got about a 2-week period. And so I usually tell people to stay away, unless it's jack pine, sometimes you can get that dry, but otherwise I try and say, you know, stay away from it. But I use popple and birch to get my fires going, and then I use oak for my long burns.
We're down to about 7 or 8 minutes, and I know, Chris,
Yeah.
you have some slides you'd like to show us about what happens when you're not burning the proper firewood. Want to take a look at that? And what have you got to start with here?
This is an example of the interior of a clay flue liner, and this is just sort of a good example of not a lot of creosote buildup. This is an example of a flue that does not have much creosote. We don't see anything building up on the sides. It does have a little slag or a little mortar coming in between. That is a little bit of an issue, but primarily what I wanted to show you here is this is what the interior of your flue should look like. If you're on the roof looking down your flue, you should see that nice pink color to that terracotta clay.
What do you got next?
Let's take a look. This is an example of that same
Wow.
flue liner with the creosote buildup in here. And we can see it's been downsized tremendously. There's just a large amount of glazed creosote, a lot of unburned carbons in there for fuel. So if you were to have a chimney fire in either one of these photos, you would have a tremendous amount of fuel to be burned.
How long would it take in a typical burning season to get a condition that we just saw there?
You know,
How wet's your wood?
yeah, that's a great question.
If-
You know,
if
that
you're
could
burning wet
vary.
wood.
That could really vary. We have customers that have, not had maintenance done in years, and we can go out there and everything looks great inside their system. They've been burning quality wood. Everything is going well for them. But you might have a situation where you get some other wood in there, and a cap gets plugged up, so it could change. This is a photo of a liner that's got some damage to it. We can see that either through moisture, possibly a chimney combustion, something's gone on, and we can see that there's actually that liner has breached. There's damage to that liner, and that needs to be replaced. Here's another example of a terracotta flue liner that has been separated. Again, damage of some kind, deterioration to the chimney, possibly a combustion as well has caused some damage. You know, very, very important. These are some exterior pictures of photos. These are very, very common. We see these every day when we're inspecting chimneys. This is the masonry area of your chimney on the exterior where you're getting deterioration, thus allowing moisture to get inside that chimney. Just some more general deterioration from an outside standpoint. And the reason I wanted to show these is because moisture is such a big component of what's going on here.
What happened here? in
This is
photo?
the very top or the crown of a chimney, and this is an example of just heavy deterioration. No caps installed on these flue liners, and this is an example of that same flue after it's been replaced. You can see the insulation barrier between the cement and the flue liner to allow for that expansion, and we would then also install chimney caps. This photo I wanted to show you because it shows a good example of all three functions. We see a good quality chimney cap, which is vital to your fireplace system. We see a good solid masonry concrete crown on the very top of the chimney, which allows water to go away. our bricks are in good condition, and then we also see a good quality flashing job. So we know we're not getting water leaking down around the rafters. So that's primarily just a good example of what a chimney should look like.
And when you find a chimney, what is this showing here maybe?
That last photo is an example of making a repair. We had found some damage in a flue liner. It's a clay flue liner that had some cracks and some damage. So we're actually repairing that with a stainless steel flue liner. It's a new flue liner inserted into the old flue liner in this case, and we will hook that up to the appliance. So there are several ways we can make repairs. That's just one example.
And this can be an issue with fuel oil. It doesn't have to be just wood burning. It can
Absolutely.
be an issue with even propane, can't it?
We're working on a furnace right now. It's a natural gas furnace. They've been dumping natural gas via a connector pipe. It's a single wall connector pipe right into a old masonry chimney. Well, the byproducts of natural gas mixed with moisture create some real acidic and deteriorating chemicals. They deteriorate those chimneys from the interior. So that home has been getting carbon monoxide for some time into the home.
Another appliance that people shouldn't forget about is the dryer.
Absolutely.
Maybe if we have a minute left, could you just tell us some of the things?
Absolutely. Dryer maintenance is vital as well. Do an annual inspection yourself. If it's more than you can handle because of the weight of the dryer, the location, have a professional come out, have that dryer vent inspected and cleaned if necessary. And that's what I would recommend for your fireplaces as well. Have an annual inspection, and then from there determine whether it needs to be serviced. The proper inspector will be giving you recommendations on the entire system.
What happens with a dryer?
Lint, via moisture and lint build up inside the connector pipe. Oftentimes that connector pipe is improperly installed. Again, minimum distance to combustibles almost never met. When we view dryer vents, I almost can guarantee you we're going to find problems with minimum distance to combustibles, as well as just the lint catches inside that dryer vent. It's a terrible source for a fire.
Gentlemen, we've run out of time. Mike, Christopher, thank you very much. This is very helpful information. Websites, Wilkening Manufacturing and ChimneyCare. Thank you for being on our show.
Thank you.
You've been watching Lakeland Currents, where we talk about what you're talking about. I'm Ray Gildow. So long until next time.